next section is on integrated pest management, or IPM. And lots of people have heard of that term. Sometimes there's a little confusion about what the term means. A lot of times I hear the definition of integrated pest management is not using pesticides. And that's actually not an accurate way to look at it. So let's talk about the definition and some principles involved with IPM. First off, it's a strategy, a pest management strategy. You need some flexibility, you need some options, you need to be able to have an adaptive strategy when using IPM. And it's not just controlling the pests, right? You want to control the pests to limit damage. That's what you're really focusing on. It takes an ecological perspective, right? Maybe when we first started using synthetic pesticides, we were more concerned about just controlling the pests. But nowadays, we're trying to take a more holistic approach and looking at a complete ecological perspective. Is this control strategy going to deliver good pest management? Is it going to be sustainable over time? Is it going to be ecologically safe? Is it going to be economical for us? So you're taking a broader holistic approach. It focuses on the long-term prevention of the damage caused by the pest species. Now this is an important principle because it's not just the presence of the species that's a problem. It's the damage that the species does. It relies a lot on monitoring programs. In other words, going out and looking for the pest, seeing at what population level the pest is, and what damage the pest is causing. So you have to do a lot of monitoring for the most part for most IPM programs. It relies on something called a threshold. Now threshold is, the easiest way to think of it is a level at which once you cross that particular threshold, then you initiate some kind of pest control action. Let me give you an example of this. Maybe in a crop production setting, maybe processing tomatoes, that people will go out and walk the fields and look for insect populations. Maybe they'll walk a particular route and sample for insects, either sampling leaves or taking a sweep net, and you're basically counting insects or insect eggs or the presence of the insect over an established area. And you're deriving numbers from that, a certain number of insects per transect or something like that. The threshold would be that level. Underneath the threshold, you can live with that much insects at that site. Above the threshold level, now you need to consider initiating some kind of control strategy. So it's not just see the pest and spray the pest. It's monitor for the pest, get a sense of the population, whether it's increasing or decreasing, and the type of damage that's being done, and then make a decision about the type of control strategy that you would use. And all of this requires that you know something about the pest. I mean, at the very least, you need to be able to recognize what the pest is. You should have a good idea about what pests you might expect in that setting. If it's a turf grass setting, like in a park or a golf course, you need to know the potential pests that you may find there, right? You need to be able to be looking for those, being able to identify them. You need to know something about the life cycle of a pest. And you need to be able to recognize perhaps the damage done by the pest. Even if you don't see the pest, recognize the damage that's done. Then you need to know what control strategies you can use for that pest, chemical and non-chemical. So let's look at your IPM toolbox, the tools that you might use. Well, first off is knowledge. You definitely need to know about the pest, and you definitely need to know about what tools, what pest management tools you have at your disposal. Monitoring, prevention strategies. I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that's definitely true when it comes to pest management. If you can prevent the pest from entering that area in the first place, then you're going to be miles ahead as far as control strategies. Using thresholds, having some predetermined idea of the amount of damage that you can tolerate from your pest. Now in some cases, if it's a crop production setting, you may think of that damage as economic. Like how many pounds per acre or how many tons per acre are you expecting of that crop? And if the damage lessens that yield, that potential yield, then that's a threshold that you would use as a target for initiating control strategies. In some cases, though, the threshold may be more aesthetic, more the appearance of things, like in a landscape setting. Know your control options, and do more evaluation and monitoring. So that's an ongoing process. When you initiate a control strategy, then you want to be monitoring to see how well that strategy worked. And then take an adaptive approach. If your control strategies are not working, then you don't stick with that strategy. You use other strategies that are available in your toolbox. And using multiple strategies, remember, that's going to help you with the resistance development issue as well. So let's talk about some of the exact tools. Biological control. Biological control is basically using a beneficial organism to reduce the damage caused by a pest organism. Now this can be as simple as using goats to eat weeds along a roadside. That's a form of biological control. It could also be using something a little bit more sophisticated, like importing an insect predator from another country and bringing it here to do battle with a pest species we have here from that same country. Biological control, it's important to remember, doesn't eradicate the pest. It doesn't get rid of the pest entirely. You're looking to limit the level of damage done by the insect, lowering it down to a level you can live with, below a threshold. Cultural control would be using management strategies that you might already use in that farming setting or that landscape management setting, but using it to the advantage of your setting and to the disadvantage of the pest. So what this might mean is irrigating enough so that you have a healthy environment, but not irrigating too little or too much where you encourage weeds. Or fertilizing just the correct amount. Too much fertilizer might encourage weeds. Too little fertilizer may actually make the turf grass weak and cause weed problems as well. Mechanical or physical control. These can be as simple as hand pulling weeds. It could also be using implements or tractors or weed whips or some kind of mechanized or handheld equipment to control pests. I mean, just something as simple as picking snails by hand and getting rid of them by hand. Chemical control, using all the different chemicals that are available. I hope you enjoyed this last session on integrated pest management. Now it's time for you to take your quiz. Good luck.